Alright, so on this side, we're going to be working on installing this torsion bar over here. In the last video, you saw the taking out of the other side and me trying to kind of figure out how the best way to go about it is. I know there was a lot of just kind of me talking and thinking and working through my thought process in the last video. So hopefully this one will just be more of me working and kind of showing how it goes back together. In the last video, I mentioned how I had to kind of play with the spring plate and the trailing arm to get the torsion bar to slide in. I already slid the torsion bar into this one just to insert it to see how it would fit. And this side actually just slid right in, which of course when I wanted to show what happens when it doesn't, it just goes right in. So all we need to do now is just lower the trailing arm to our 2.5 inches from our previous measurement to get the same preload as the other side. So you can kind of see I have the jack that comes with these cars, the spare tire jack in here between the body and the trailing arm. And I'm just going to use that to push down on the trailing arm to get our desired height on this. So it's kind of in here precariously, but it should work. Hopefully it won't slide out of here and do something silly, but we'll get to going on this and we'll go from there. Okay, so now that we get the torsion bars in, I think the only way to get the rear compressed enough to get the lower bolt back in the housing for the torsion bar carrier is to actually set it on the ground. I tried to lift it up a little bit, lift the trailing arm up with the jack, but it just lifted the whole car up. So I think she's going to have to set it on the ground and we'll see what it looks like and see if we can get the bolt back in that way. So set it down and see what it looks like. Alright, so as we saw, set the car on the ground and it sat way too high, like way too high. So obviously my thought process with putting the additional 2 inches of preload down on the hub was very wrong. Don't do that. Do not recommend it. Apparently the way that a lot of these other people are doing it with the math ways of going about things is the right way. So look up some of the videos on that, and there's a lot of calculations and stuff that goes into it to get it right. I still kind of like my way. Trial and error, it works pretty well. So what I did is we got it jacked back up, taken apart. I slid the other torsion bar out and moved it 2 splines less. And that looked pretty good just by putting the wheel on and jacking up the control arm. It seemed to look the right height once I get, I don't know what this thing has in it for fuel right now, and there's not a lot of gear or anything in it. So once it's, and there's going to be, because these are new springs in it, there's going to be some settling in them after a little bit. So I think it'll be pretty good. It'll settle out to a good ride height. So what I'm going to do on this side, and I'll show you, I'm going to slide this torsion bar in just a little bit. So I'm only changing the splines right on the end so I can keep track of it better. So I'll slide this one in, I'm going to raise the control arm up. So we're going to take 2 splines of preload out of it. And that should make us equal the other side and give us a pretty good ride height. So I will show what I do for indexing the splines. It's pretty easy. I'm going to just drive this in, but not so far that the other side comes disengaged. So I don't want to lose where I am there, and actually I'm probably going to clean it and mark it with a Sharpie, put a good line where I am. So if that torsion bar does pop out the other side, I can get it lined up again pretty easily. So we'll give you a close up here, show you what I'm looking at. We'll put some marks on this side, marks on the other side, and then we'll be able to go from there. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be pushing this torsion bar in to re-index and not push the other one into this and push it out. And the reason I'm pushing it in to index is because I can have the torsion bar engaged in these splines out here, but still not be engaged in the center splines in the spring carrier. So it's a little harder to know how many teeth I'm actually moving on the torsion bar. So I can push the bar in to the spring carrier more and have it stay engaged in the center on the inside of the bar, and then just move the outside the amount that I want to, the amount of teeth that I want to move it. So you can kind of see, we'll look through the hole here. And I got a Sharpie mark on there that lines up with the little slice that I cut in it accidentally when I was cutting the end cap off. So that'll be my kind of datum mark for keeping track of how many splines I want to move. So what we'll do now is we'll just get our bar on there with our hammer and we'll knock it in. You can see we got the torsion bar pushed in just past the end of the splines there, and I can actually, this might be a little hard to show in one hand, but I can move my spring plate without the torsion bar moving. So that's good. We can re-index it now and get that where we need. And I'll show you on the other side here that our torsion bar has popped out a little bit, but the thread or the splines are still engaged with the torsion or the spring plate. So we're not going to lose our setting on this side. That's going to stay exactly where we need it. We can adjust the other side, a couple splines, push this back through, and we're going to be golden. So what we're going to do here now is I got my jack over. I'm going to push up on the shock mount to help easily control how far we bring this control arm up and to make sure we get the splines lined up really nice with it. Just by actually pulling up on the control arm like I did to show, we actually moved it 1 spline, so we only have 1 more to go, and then we'll be in pretty good position for this. So we'll get her, raised up a little bit and get it lined up real good. If we look through our hole, we can see our marks on that torsion bar, and you can see it is now 2 teeth more advanced than where it was, and that brought our control arm up a little bit and should match the other side now. I'll show you that we didn't disengage the other side, so those splines didn't even move. Well, I would show you, but it looks like hitting the end of the bar with the hammer made it, well, actually wiped the mark off the torsion bar, but it did not move. So we'll be pretty good there. So I goofed up. You remember how just a little bit ago I said that the reason I'm pushing the torsion bar into the spring carrier was because it can be, you know, halfway engaged in the outer splines but still not be engaged in the inner splines. And as I showed you with the bar that I pushed out, I had it pushed out about halfway out of its splines, and it came out of the outer splines, and it came out of the inner splines on the side that I had already set and did not want to change, and that I said did not move. Well, it in fact did move, and I was looking at it over there and noticed because I had the tire left on that side, and I was like, that's weird, the tire's on the ground. It was not on the ground before. Looked at the marks again, and they did not move, but then I was like, oh yeah, it slid out of the inner splines. So what I've done now is on the side that we just did right here, I put a little jack under the spring plate for or not the spring plate, the mount for the shock on the control arm. So I'll push the bar back out of the other side, and it'll stay engaged on this side. Well, it won't stay engaged on this side, it'll come out of this side, and then this side won't move. I can push it back in, and then I can get the other side lined back up where I need it to. So a lot of trial and error in this whole process. I haven't done it this way before, so bear with me. This is a learning for all of us. Yeah, we'll get through it one way or another. The trick with holding the one control arm with the jack while I moved the torsion bars to re-index the other side that I messed up actually worked really, really well. That side did not move at all. I was able to slide the torsion bar in, slide the other one out, index. It was about how far I had to move it before, which was about 2 splines. So got it indexed 2 splines back together. It looks really good. Both sides are even. So what I'm going to do now, I put the wheels back on, and we're actually going to set it down on the ground and see how it looks. I think it should sit really nice now, and we'll be able to have plenty of room for larger tires. And I think I ordered new shocks the other day. They should be in Tuesday, I believe, so 2 days. And we'll be in really good shape suspension-wise on this car. Once I put it back down on the ground and the suspension compresses a little bit more, I'll get the lower bolts back in the aluminum housing that holds the spring plate in, and we'll be pretty good to go. So let's get it on the ground, see what it looks like. The car's on the other side of the shop now, and I think we got a pretty good height here. The front's still a little high, and the hood's off. So what I'm actually going to do, I have the motor right over here, and I'm going to just drop it down in here and set it in to see where the front sits and see how level the car is. See how it looks overall, if I want to bring the rear up another spline or not. I think it should be pretty good as it is, but I want to get the motor in here and see how it really looks with the front of the car, you know, more or less at the proper ride height. So let's get the motor in here. The motor is kind of in. I just have it sitting on the cross member down there for right now. This is just to get a visual of how the car will sit. The front is still high. It brought it down a little bit. It did level the car out a bit, but I think I want to bring the rear up just a little bit to give it a little bit more of a downward rake towards the front. So I think what I'm gonna do is lift it back up again. I'm gonna give the rear just one more spline to kind of level it out, or give it just a tad bit of a downward rake. So we'll get it back up in the air and give these one more index. With the car back up in the air, I remembered that I didn't need to actually re-index the torsion bars and other tooth. There is a ride height adjustment already in the trailing arm and spring play of the car, and I wanted to see where that was at and if I could just get that all the way to the max, and hopefully get the lift I needed out of that, because one more tooth on the torsion bar would have been way too high and just not good. So what I did is, the adjustments that you're going to do for the ride height are these two bolts right here. This one's your pivot, and this one is the one that actually spins to lower the car, and you can see I marked it right there just to make sure I was turning it in the right direction, and I actually got a fair bit of travel out of that. And you can see where the bolt was right there. So it was almost all the way low where it was, and I brought it to all the way high. And that should give, I think, another like half an inch on the rear of the car. So I did that on this side. We'll go do it on the other side and see what we come up with. So these were actually the first bolts that have fought me on this car, and I actually had to get the torches out to get them broken loose, but you can see the line down there where it used to be, where it is now. We got a fair bit of extra height out of that adjustment right there. Pretty easy. The two bolts, first one's your pivot, that one's your adjuster. Just loosen them and run them in, it'll drop it right down, get an extra half inch or so. So right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the rear tires back on and then drop it back down on the ground, and let's see how it looks. I still have the engine in the car. There's a box in there as well. We've got some other parts for my truck that came in. So yeah, we'll put it back on the ground. Actually, before I put it back on the ground, I'm going to put the lower bolt back in the torsion carrier right there, because I haven't put that back in yet. So we'll get that back in, and then pretty much everything's done. And also I got the first set of brand new parts for this car, came today. Some longer rear shocks for the back of this, because the original ones are too short to handle the lift. They're right about maxed out to get to the ride height that we want. So got some longer shocks. I got this part number and brand off of, I think I found it on Renlist, one of the forums on there. They are Gabriel Classic 8260. That's probably backwards, but they're Gabriel Classics 82060 is the part number, 82060. So they're pretty cheap. They're like 20 bucks a side on Rock Auto. So I was ordering some other stuff for my truck, like I said, so I just threw them on the order. So now I think we'll set it on the ground, we'll see how it looks. We'll try putting these new rear shocks in, see how it goes. All right. Here is how the car sits after making that final adjustment in the rear, and I think it is perfect. It's looking nice and level. If you look at the leveler just a little bit down, looking at the rocker compared to the ground, we got good clearance front and rear. I think this thing's gonna be awesome. I'm super duper excited with the way this looks. I did pull one of the old shocks out, and compared to the new ones, move some stuff around here. So this new shock is just about fully compressed right now. I think it can go about an inch farther. This is one of the old shocks, fully extended. I don't think these are gonna be short enough compressed and extended. It's like super duper long. So I'm not fully sure on these Gabriel shocks yet if I got the right ones. I remember looking around somewhere online and finding the actual lengths that we needed, the compressed length and the extended length for the shocks. So I'm gonna try to find that again and just double check to make sure I do have the right shocks, but I'm thinking they're gonna be too short and limit the travel on the rear of the car. But again, here's from this side. Obviously the camber in the front's messed up. Gonna need to camber those in a little bit, and I just set the motor and the parts in here to get kind of the weight somewhat correct, so it'll sit more the way it's going to when it's together. I'm gonna wrap this up here for now. This is getting really exciting with this car. The suspension's getting there. I got a few things to look into, but we're moving right along. It's looking good. Thanks everyone for watching, and likes and subscriptions. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna try to keep these coming as good and regular as I can, and hope you guys enjoy. If you have any questions or comments or anything I can do better or anything, just let me know. I'd love to hear. Thanks.